Okay, so update. Um, they dropped the gems. I think I know what I'm gonna do for League Start. I'm gonna play Pathfinder. I'm interested to see what they're doing with the new league. I think that I want to wait and see exactly how the new flash changes are working. Um, and with that in mind, I'm gonna do some pathing to try and put me in position to make use of that. And I'm gonna go Elemental Hit. Let me get rid of that. I was looking at Elemental Hit as soon as I saw that they released Prismatic Burst. Now, Prismatic Burst has a lot of tags, right? It's support, it's spell, AoE, fire, cold, lightning, prismatic, and trigger. There's a couple of things that are very interesting to note about this. First of all, it has the prismatic tag. So combat focus works with elemental burst. Right, so if you go look at combat focus, the way that it's written is that with 40 total stat and stat in radius, prismatic skills cannot choose element. So that means that if we have a prismatic burst, which is a spell, and it can choose one of the three elements, it's a little bit of a weighted choice. We can make it, for instance, not choose cold. Now, the reason I'm saying cold is because there is the replica cold iron point, which gives +3 to level of all cold spell skill gems. So probably wouldn't actually work with Prismatic Burst. Even though it is a spell, it is not a skill. Maybe? I don't know. That's something to figure out exactly how that interaction is. What is interesting about Prismatic Burst is that it has the text that says deal 100% less damage of each unchosen damage type. So a few things about this. One, it is you can deal chaos damage with it. Right, so if you have added chaos damage, it will affect that. But if you are trying to convert to chaos damage, it is not going to take that. The thing that is nice about it is you do have the ability to maintain elemental equilibrium, because a little bit of extra cold damage or a little bit of extra fire damage doesn't mess up your elemental equilibrium. So I'm looking at combining it with Elemental Hit. This does roughly double the damage of an Elemental Hit. Now an Elemental Hit hits twice, so it's about the same as an Elemental Hit, which means that if I have an Elemental Hit that hits about twice a second, which isn't very fast, right? So it doesn't take much investment to get there. This is 100% more multiplier on damage, which is pretty good. Once you start hitting more frequently, then it doesn't really work out as much, and the scaling is also a little bit trickier, depending on how you do that. Before hopping onto my build plans, Firestorm, Val Firestorm, people seem to be really excited about it. The thing I find interesting is that it is a duration skill, right? Much like Firestorm. Now, if you reduce the duration, you reduce the soul gain prevention time. But where reducing the duration reduces the impacts of a normal Firestorm, the Val Firestorm fires 16 bolts. So if we reduce the duration on Val Firestorm, we will reduce the duration of the Burning Ground but we're still going to get 16 bolts. If we can leverage that and use the duration reduction, can we get our 7-second soul gain prevention down to the point where we are able to start gaining souls before the last of these 16 bolts impacts? Alternatively, can we get to the point where some of the clunkiness of this spiral of 16 bolts is happening so fast that we remove some of that weirdness around it? So I think that there's a lot of opportunities to play around with skill effect duration reduction and Vaal Firestorm, and possibly get in the ballpark of a main skill type setup for Vaal Firestorm. So there's some opportunities there. I'll probably be playing around with that. It's much harder to do this compared to what it used to be, which is frustrating, right? Like old Elemental Equilibrium plus Prismatic Burst would be amazing. Old Vaal Soul Prevention Reduction with Vaal Firestorm would be amazing, but that's not the world we live in. So let's talk about the tree. First of all, we need to get to the point where we are doing enough damage quick enough. I'm looking at, within the first 12 levels, getting to the point where I can get to Precise Technique. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to get to Precise Technique. That's a massive more damage multiplier. 9, 10, 11, 12, Elemental Equilibrium. So now we have Precise Technique, we have Elemental Equilibrium available to us, and we can start grabbing probably the mana on hit over here and the mana on hit over there. Then we'll pick up one with Nature, which will get us to a pretty good spot for Act 1, with dealing pretty decent damage. Right, and we're gonna go Elemental Hit in Act 1. I'll probably go Dual Wand. I did look at some other options for that, but I think Dual Wand is what I'm gonna try and do. One of the nice benefits of Elemental Hits, and why I kind of like it as a league start for this league, is that if you find an item that has a good passive tree, you don't have to get rid of it, right? Because you don't really care about the damage on the weapon. So the passives on the weapon can be useful for a much longer time. You can invest in a starter weapon without having to discard it because it just doesn't do enough damage. Once we have this in place, let's grab Primeval Force. Let's grab our life nodes up here. We're not going to grab Field Medicine in this cluster. We're probably not going to grab Expert Hunter at this point. I'm still not sure I'm going to do that. Same for Entrench or Thick Skin. I think all of those are not really worth it until you get your third Ascendancy point. We do want to grab the 100% increased damage with hits against burning enemies. We can pick that up for 4 points out of a Fire Mastery here. It gives some chance to ignite, it gives some random damage over time, it gives some additional attack speed, a bunch of things we like, but 100% increased damage for 4 nodes is just awesome, especially since we're relatively light on increased damage nodes at this point. We got a 50 over here, we have a 24 over here, and this is effectively 4 25s plus some attack speed. It will be pretty useful early on. And then we start the long track. We are going to pick up Prophetic Chemistry. It's just super useful early on. Reflexes, another one of those value points early on. Don't know about efficacy. Reservation efficiency, not efficacy. A mana mastery, we may not need this. Kind of have to look at what's gonna go on there. Pick up Ash, Frost, and Storm. And then we are gonna go up here. Once we get close enough, we'll respec out of the small fire wheel down here. Down here. And then we will migrate to the fire wheel up here for the increased area of effect. It's still only 4 points, but increased fire damage plus increased area of effect and more area effect. It's just a better wheel for us. And then also pick up Stormweaver with the ability to increase cold damage, lightning damage. I mean, not for all of our elements, but it's pretty decent. And then the 5% increased damage taken is of course super useful. And then I'm looking at this wand wheel. If on the other hand I find a good bow, or I find some good melee weapons that, you know, elemental hit would allow me to use for a very long time, we might just change our mind at that point, right? So it's very flexible as far as the weapon setup. Most of the nodes don't care about what kind of weapon you use. If you use bows, if you use melee, if you use wands. Intention is for wands, but if I don't go there, that's fine. And then to play around with the league mechanic early on. Is this going to be fast? No. Is it going to be fun? Yeah. Because any cool tree that I find could make a weapon amazing for elemental hit just because of the mechanics. And I'm not planning to hit super frequent either. I'm not investing too heavy into attack speed. And part of the reason for that is that with the burst spell, I mean, it doubles my damage. Right? Not all of our damage increases will affect that. So for instance, we have some elemental attack damage here, we have some elemental attack damage over here. But a lot of the other things do. Part of the reason I'm looking at possibly not doing Expert Hunter and Marks, and possibly maybe go for the Curse Mastery here for the 20% chance to Ignite, Freeze, Shock, and Poison, is because the spell isn't a projectile, it's only area of effect. So that might not work out the way I wanted to. As far as links, might have to go life tap, but you're just looking at not the top tier links necessarily. You're really looking at the second tier links that increase your damage dealt by 24-ish% instead of like 35%. But the benefit is that you have 100% more multiplier effectively with Prismatic Burst. There are recipes for the combat focused duels, right? So that is super useful. We are in a tree that allows us to relatively easily slot combat focuses. We also have, we have access to this one over here and this spot over here. This spot over here we could go to if we really wanted to. The other thing to keep in mind is that we are in a position to then change up our build and keep most of this long pathing structure intact without having to respec out of it. From a respec perspective, what I'm looking at is now how do the flasks interact? Right? Does it allow us to use the unique flask that allows life flask recovery to apply to energy shield? Does that work? If so, that is insane, and it's hard not to then start to think about going for pain attunement, going low life, putting in the casual righteous fire, because why not? How does it interact with the providing recovery to minions? Are there opportunities to have a very light investment minions that are super survivable just because I'm popping flasks for myself. Right? If we give a couple of thousand points of recovery to minions, that's a lot. It can help out a lot. So yeah, that's also very interesting to see exactly how all of those different effects are going to work out. I don't want to bank on any of these interactions for League Start though, which is why I'm kind of looking at going this route. It's experimental. It's not going to be super fast. It is going to allow me to engage with the League mechanic, I think, throughout the leveling process, which is something I'm looking forward to. And I think that once we get to the point where we switch over to spells, I might go into more of a spell, maybe a spell slinging, Righteous Fire Trinity build. We'll see exactly how that's all going to work out. But right now, I'm pretty excited. I'm still working through some of the details. I'm contemplating whether or not Spellslinger could be good. Right? It gives another way to have my attack trigger spells, especially if I don't attack super frequently. It could be really useful. And Firestorm would be possibly one of those spells to look at. So that's the rough idea. Should you do this? No. Any build that I play is not as optimal as what most other people put out there. But it does allow me to maximize the fun, and I think an Elemental Hit allows me to engage more with the League mechanic. And it puts me in a position where with relatively little resources, I can respec into something that's available to me that really focuses in on this insane recovery mechanism we have. And attacks don't really use that insane recovery, right? That's where you start looking at things like Righteous Fire. Righteous Fire does utilize that insane recovery. Spellcasting. Right? Dark Pact, Forbidden Rite. I mean, with the recovery we have, we can just casually start triggering those things like mad, and even if we have a degen of a few thousand to overcome, okay, we still have a few thousand left. So yeah, we'll see how it works out. But and then for like my 3, Master Surgeon, it's too good. That's all I have to say about it. Nature's Adrenaline is super convenient and lazy. Maybe Nature's Boon after that. I really wanted to do Master Distiller, but I can't justify it. Master Distiller is... It's not good. You need so much charge recovery. Right, if you cast a spell and you want to get the most out of it, you're using 9 charges? I mean, probably would never use 9 charges, but you like to use 6 charges when you use a spell skill. So, and again, this is something that we have to test. Does it work with Herald of Thunder? Well, 6 charges for those benefits on the Herald of Thunder, pretty good. But without knowing that interaction is actually going to work, yeah, it's not worth it. Anyway, that's the plan. We'll see how it all works out. We'll see how the interactions work out. Not super fast, relatively low risk, and I think it works well for the League mechanic.